You know what? Cooking rice is simple. Whether it's Spanish rice, a wild rice pilaf, or just simple plain old white rice, it is not tough to cook this stuff, okay? So if you're having a hard time with rice, watch this show. You're going to be really surprised at what you learn in this one short, easy going show. I'll tell you what, rice is a special thing, and this is going to show you how to have your way with it. Enjoy. Hello, welcome back to Texas Cooking Today. On this episode, it's going to be cooking rice and getting it right. This is going to be all about understanding how to cook rice, the basics of cooking rice. I decided to do this dish because I kept running into people. They kept telling me the same story. They just didn't know how to cook rice. They said every time they tried to cook it, it didn't come out right. And I said, I'll tell you what, I'm going to do a show. We're going to do a show on exactly how to cook rice, and we're going to use more than one kind. So come a little closer and let me show you all of these little goodies that we're going to be cooking with today. And I'm going to show you how to cook rice in ways that you've never thought you could cook rice. Alright? Come right over here. Now on this show, this is all about cooking rice. And I wanted to show you a variety of different kinds of rice. Here we have some jasmine rice, and this is just a plain long grain white rice. This one is white basmati, and it's a very fast cooking rice. It has a very low amount of starch in it. It's really neat cooking rice. This one's a brown basmati. It takes a little longer to cook than most rices, but it has a fabulous texture, wonderful flavor, and when you're doing a rice pilaf or something like that, this is a fantastic start for it. And over here we have some long grain wild rice, and this is just a dark brown wild rice. Now what is rice? Rice is simply grass seed, okay? All of these are just different kinds of grasses. Most of them are marshland grasses that we use for rice. They do produce a better seed that's a little more plump seed and more flavorful. So on this show, it's going to be all about cooking these, and you're going to find some different ways of doing it. You're going to find out that you can add vegetables and spices and use different kinds of liquid other than just water to produce some fantastic kinds of rice. So let's get on to cooking these guys up. The first thing I have to do to make my Mexican rice is to scorch the skin off of my chili. Now, if you don't have a stove to do this with, you can also use a torch, or a grill works just fine if you have a gas grill. Anything that produces a real intense high heat, even a broiler, will usually work well for this. Place the chili very close to the boiling element if you do that. Now we're just going to give that a little bit of time. I'm going to char that skin all the way around. Now on my ingredients, how much to how much? This is a really simple thing. We have 1 cup of rice to 2 cups of liquid in every single circumstance. Whether I'm making this kind of rice, or whether I'm making a white rice, or if I'm making a wild rice pilaf, it's all the same. It's always 1 part rice to 2 parts liquid. And that doesn't matter how much you're making. You can use 2 cups of rice to 4 cups of liquid. It always works out the same, a half a cup of rice to 1 cup of liquid. I like to use the 1 cup to 2 cup ratio, mostly because it's very practical. It's good for 3 to 4 people. That would be 4 hearty portions. And of course, if it's just you by yourself, you might just cook a half a cup at a time, or a 1/4 cup at a time, and make it a little small batch. So let's go ahead and jump right into this. I have the same amount by weight of tomatoes and chili. My tomatoes and chili are both right about 7 ounces worth. I'm going to be using a couple of cloves of garlic and a little bit of paprika, cumin, and salt. And that's going to be about a teaspoon of each on those. Now here we are at our sink, and I have brought the poblano over here. We're just going to wash that skin off of the outside of it. This doesn't take but a moment. Now it's time that I go ahead and prepare my vegetables for the Mexican rice. Let's slice that poblano in half, and then I'm just going to make simple long slices. And I'm making these about 1/4 of an inch wide. And that's because I don't want these dice to be really too big. I want them to be a very controlled size. On this, when you're cutting, remember to keep those fingers curled under so that knife blade can't have anything to come in contact with. Okay? Keep the thumb behind the fingers, as you see me doing here, holding it down, bringing them together with the fingertips and curling them under. See how the tips themselves are under? My thumb is back. Now I'm going to cut up those tomatoes to be just the same size. Go ahead and place our chilies down in a bowl here. Now on these tomatoes, I'm going to go ahead and just take off that stem end and get that out of my way. And I want to cut these in half lengthwise. Now on these tomatoes, I'm not interested in keeping any of that interior pulp. So what I want to do is just to go ahead and wash out the pulp and seeds off of each of these tomatoes. There is also a ridge that runs down the inside center on this. It's white in color, and that's not something that I'm going to want in my rice. So I will discard that also. But the rest of that center ridge that's red, I want it, and the rest of the pulp. Now what we want to do is to, again, make those thin, 1/4 inch thick slices. Again, remember, keep those fingers curled back. If you want, turn it with skin side up. And it helps when you're cutting tomatoes for that knife to be just absolutely razor sharp. It needs to be at least that sharp or sharper. Easy to see where we're going to get a lot of color in our rice this way. But that's just part of it. Now, on your garlic, what I'm doing there is just doing a rough twist on that garlic. And normally for this I would want to use 2 cloves. However, this 1 clove looks absolutely huge. And it looks about the quantity of 2 regular cloves. So I'm going to just go with that. That's more than enough garlic for what we're doing. That's equivalent to 2 cloves of more normal sized cloves of garlic. I don't want anybody biting into any kind of a chunk of garlic. That's really unpleasant when you're eating a dish. There we go. Okay, I have there my 2 cloves of garlic, even though it was 1 giant one. Now we have all of our ingredients assembled over here for our Mexican rice. We have the chilies and tomatoes, garlic. Our spices are behind here. And we have our chicken stock and the rice. But before we can get down to doing any boiling or anything like that, we have to first prepare the rice. And that's done in a very special way. The first thing I want to do is turn on this front burner. And I want to start heating it up. Now the pot has started to heat nicely. I'm putting in some oil in the bottom of this just to get this started. And that was maybe a tablespoon and a half of oil. Pour in my rice. Just go ahead and work that around because I want to get oil on all of the rice. There we go. You notice you can toss the same way you do in a skillet. You just bring it up and back. And it will cook up just fine. Now what we're going to do here is just lightly toast the rice. And this is a very important step that often gets skipped when making Mexican rice. You don't want to just heat it lightly. You want to actually toast it. So we're going to get some color on the rice by doing this. Okay, I think I've reached a beautiful color here. It's time to put in our stock. I have turned the heat up to high. Now, I'm going to place my vegetables down in this. And all of this gets cooked together at the same time. Good stir. Now, As we mentioned before, we're going to be adding in a little extra spice. And what I want to do is use about a teaspoon of paprika. There we go. That's going to give it a lot of color. The cumin is going to give it a very dry, earthy note. And it works on this dish. Okay, about a teaspoon of cumin. And the same way on our salt. 1 pinch, 2 pinch teaspoon. There we go. Now what I need to do is to bring this to a boil. Once it comes to a boil, I'm going to cover it, reduce it to simmer, and we're going to allow it to simmer until it stops steaming. It's just that simple, nothing more to it. As you can see, our liquid has come to a boil. Now all I have to do is place my lid on top of this. I'm going to reduce my temperature to a low, and we're going to allow that to sit and simmer. And when it stops steaming, and that should be in about, roughly 30 minutes, 25 to 30 minutes, we'll be checking this. And if there's any moisture in the bottom, we'll let it just keep on finish steaming out. Other than that, it will be finished at that point. Now there is something I want to mention about cooking rice. Once you get this lid on the pot, don't lift it, don't check it, do not stir it. Leave it alone. That's all you have to do. Low heat, leave it alone, wait for the steam to stop. If you do anything else, you're only going to muck up your rice. So leave it alone, okay? That's how simple rice is. Now, before we prepare our wild rice pilaf, I want to go ahead and get these shallots taken care of. Now, as with onions and all other things like this, I like to leave that root end intact. The only thing I'm going to take off is going to be the stem end. I'm going to start by taking it off. And then I want to run my knife up the side through those outer layers. There we go. And that's just going to help me to peel these back, okay? I can get those outer dry layers. There we go. And if you get a little bit of the fresh shallot, I tell you what, try not to lose sleep over that, okay? I certainly won't. Now, how you chop this up really doesn't matter, because by the time it gets cooked down into this wild rice, it's not going to make any difference whatsoever. There's a little of that paper left there. So what a lot of people do when they're cutting shallots is they will start, let me see if that bottom skin is going to be alright or if it's going to be trouble for me. See there? That would have been trouble. Let's go ahead and take out that outer layer so that paper isn't in our dish. And I'm down to the nice interior squeaky purple portion. Now, a lot of chefs, when they're cutting these, they're going to start by making a couple of cuts sideways through the shallot, just like so. Alright, and then they're going to make some vertical cuts, just like so. And that way, when they cross-cut this, they're going to end up with just a whole bunch of nice little dice, as you can see right there. Now it's time for us to prepare our wild rice pilaf. We are going to start with some brown basmati rice. This is a great tasting rice, but it does take it some time to cook. And what I want to do is I want to go ahead and toast this rice in this pan. I'm going to turn on my front burner to bring up some heat. I'm also turning on my rear burner. Now, to get started on this wild rice, this is the longest cooking rice of the two, so you can just go ahead and get it started. And I have here just slightly over 1 cup of liquid, and this is the only rice that you don't necessarily have to use a 2-to-1 ratio. You can use a little bit more liquid in this than you would in other rices, because at the end we're going to pour off any excess liquid. We're going to boil this for about an hour. So I have there my rice in my beef broth. I want to add just a small amount of salt on that, and I'm putting in there just a little bit of olive oil, about a teaspoon. Now when that comes up to a boil, I'm going to reduce it in temperature. Now that my heat has come up in this pan just a little bit, I'm going to put in some cooking oil here, just plain cooking oil, and I'm going to put in there about 1.5 tablespoons of oil. I'm going to pour my rice on that. I'm going to get it coated all the way around. Now the same way you would toss in a skillet, do this the same way, or you can use a spoon to stir that. And what I want to do is just toast this lightly. And what I'm doing here when I'm toasting rice is it's just altering the flavor of it. It's bringing out a richer, better flavor, a little more aromatic rice also. So it gives it a good odor, it gives it a good flavor, and it really improves on the total product. Now I'm going to toast this lightly for about 8 to 10 minutes, turning it and flipping it lightly. To do that every minute or so that it does not burn. Now that has been on there for roughly 8 minutes now. And it's time to go ahead and we're going to pour in our liquid. My timer beeping and talking to me. Now I'm going to go ahead and add in my shallots also. And these are going to pretty much just cook down to nothing, but they're just going to add a wonderful light flavor to this whole dish. Now, salt, we want about a teaspoon. There we go. Lavender, the same, about a teaspoon. Now in my lavender here I have a bit of some stems. I'm going to pull those out. There we go. Get that down in. That adds a light, sweet flavor to it. It's very delicate. Mustard. On that one, it's the same thing. We're looking at about 1 teaspoon is what we want right in there. Tarragon. On this one, you can have plenty of tarragon. I'm going to put in a full tablespoon, which would be 3 teaspoons. Now all I need to do, give this a bit of a stir, and the same way we did with the wild rice, we're going to bring this to a boil, and this needs to boil for about 45 to 50 minutes. So both of these are a little bit longer cooking, but as with most rice, they have the same principle, 2 to 1 on your ratio of liquid to rice, 1 part rice, 2 parts liquid. As soon as that comes to a boil, we're going to cover it, and it's time that we take a look at that Mexican rice. It's been cooking now for about 25 minutes. Look at the beautiful color we have here. Let's pull back some of those ingredients and look in the bottom. Now, when I look in the bottom, there's no water sitting in there. I have some dimples on top of the rice. It's fluffy and loose. This rice is finished. All I have to do now is turn off the heat, cover it again, and allow it to stand. Looky there, look at that beautiful Spanish rice. That's all there is to Spanish rice, guys. As you can see, my rice has now come to a boil. I'm going to put in just a little bit of olive oil, about 1.5 teaspoons. Give it a light stir. Cover this. I'm going to reduce my heat to low and allow that to simmer. And it's going to be cooking for a long time, guys, so just give it plenty of time. Be patient with it. Now, one retraction I want to make real quick when I said that basmati takes a long time to cook. That has to pertain to brown basmati. Brown basmati takes a long time to cook, a little longer than your average white rice, which takes 25 to 30 minutes usually at the longest. Brown basmati will take 45 minutes on average, sometimes a little longer. Wild rice up to an hour. Now, if you want to cook a basmati rice that cooks quickly, you'll use white basmati. The white basmati will cook in 12 to 15 minutes. Now, white basmati has got to be the easiest rice in the world to cook. On this one, all you have to do, take 2 cups of water and about a teaspoon to a teaspoon of salt. I put in closer to a teaspoon there. About 2 teaspoons of oil, or if you like, put in some butter, a couple of pats of butter in there. Go to a high flame and just go ahead and put in white basmati rice. Now, white basmati has a unique property to it, and that is that it cooks amazingly fast. This will be cooked up, complete and ready to go in about 12 minutes. It takes 12 to 15 minutes total cooking time on white basmati. And the neat thing of it is it actually tastes better than almost any other rice that you've ever put in your mouth. It has a somewhat herb-like flavor to it. And this is the same for white basmati or just plain long grain white rice. If you're going to be cooking up rice, very simple. 2 cups water, 1 cup rice, a little bit of oil, some salt. Bring it to a boil, cover it, lower the temperature to simmer, and allow it to finish simmering off. And it normally takes it, like I said, for the white basmati, 12 to 15 minutes. For long grain white rice, you're usually looking at 25 to 30 minutes on it. And those par cooked rice, like minute rice, those types of things, I really don't like them. They have a tendency to split lengthwise on the grains, and it doesn't produce as good a quality of rice. It's not as firm in its texture. Now that white rice has come up to a boil. I'm going to cover it. We'll reduce the temperature. Let's take a quick look at our white basmati rice. Now if you'll notice on the top of the rice, it looks like there's some little pits, what some people like to call fish eye. I don't know why they call it that, but it just looks like little pits. Now when I pull back the rice and look at the bottom, it's pretty much all steamed dry, okay? Which means that this is pretty much ready, and it's been cooking now for 11 minutes. I'm going to give it its last minute, and then it's going to be ready to fluff. Okay, that's all there was to that. Now cooking white rice, whether it be 12 minutes or 30 minutes, it's just the same, okay? And don't make it hard. Don't stir it. If you notice, I didn't stir it. I didn't mess with it after we simmered it. Once you start simmering, simply leave it alone. When the steaming stops, as it has happened here, then the product is finished. I've just shut off the heat to it. We'll give it a light fluff. And if you'll notice, it's not sticky. The grains are loose. That's one of the nice things about basmati. It doesn't have a whole lot of starch in it, and so it's not really sticky. Our brown basmati has now stopped steaming. Well, it's not steaming as much. And if I pull back on the center of the rice, and I notice that there is no water in the bottom of the pot boiling, so I can go ahead and shut off the heat on this, and take my fork and just lightly fluff it. Now we'll get the rest of the ingredients mixed in. Those herbs and the onions and everything will always set up on the top. Now if you notice how light and fluffy that is, and it's not sticky or anything like that, and you can see some of the grains that were toasted as well as the herbs that are in there, that is just good looking rice. I gotta taste this. Mmm. Oh, that's delicious. Now, while I'm waiting here, this has been cooking for about 43, maybe 44 minutes. This is still on its way. It has been cooking just a few minutes longer, so it has about another 10 to 15 minutes to go on it. Now the thing about this long grain rice, this wild rice, like this, it's mostly just the husk on the outside that takes such a long time for it to cook. And you can always taste it, and if it tastes good to you, if the texture's good, you can go ahead and stop your cook. Now it seems a bit firm to me still, so I'm going to let it go on and cook. Now, our wild rice has been cooking for approximately 1 hour. I open this up, and there's of course still plenty of liquid down in this. And I did start with an additional amount. I had about a 1/4 cup extra, and that was done quite on purpose so that there would be plenty of it for such a long cook, because I didn't want it to all steam out. Now some of my grains are starting to split just slightly, and that's a good sign that this stuff is really softened up. Now I want to go ahead and pour this into this. However, I don't want all of that moisture being in it. So what I'm going to do is to use a strainer and the sink. So pardon me, just drain off that excess liquid and pour it right down into here. Any excess that sticks behind, I like to just pull out. And here we end up with a wonderful wild rice pilaf with the brown basmati and the wild rice together, and the herbs, and the spice, the shallot. Everything just comes together on this to make an absolutely fantastic rice dish. So there you have it. Simple. Wild rice pilaf. Well, there you go. As you can see, cooking rice is not a difficult thing. It is a very simple thing as long as you just leave it alone. Once you start the cooking process, leave it alone. Let the steam slow down. Then check it. And you'll have this beautiful, fluffy, look at that, it's not sticky. The rice is just rolling around. You know, I like, as far as the plain white rice goes, the white basmati is my favorite. It has herbal-like flavor to it. It's wonderful. And this one here has that beefy flavor to it. I was just sitting here eating this earlier. So delicious and so full-bodied. Really nice with a hearty meal. And of course, what goes so well with so many Hispanic meals is the Spanish rice. With that wonderful chilies, tomatoes, and the texture of this, that jasmine rice is just so fluffy and light and soft. Oh wow, that is truly, truly delicious. All of them. And as you can see, it doesn't take a rice cooker. It doesn't take a special technique. It just takes you being less involved and giving it the right amount of time. Cooking rice the right way, very simple. Thank you very much for watching Texas Cooking Today. Please subscribe if you haven't, and to my subscribers, thank you very much, and you have a good day. Thank you for watching Texas Cooking Today, the show where you can get great recipes and the best techniques are taught. Please subscribe to Texas Cooking Today, where you will always find something hot and ready to eat.